conviction is all about confidence. And as I say that, you got to go, well, isn't that obvious? But actually, when we think about confidence, often what we think about is the ego state, the projection of our ego out into the world. And I'm not talking about that level of confidence. What I'm talking about is that if we want to lead with greater conviction, is that we need to build what I call a foundational level of confidence. And that's a confidence in kind of who I am, the authentic identity I want to adopt and project into the world, and why am I here, which is all about my deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Because actually, it's only if you've got that foundational confidence that you can then direct your energy in a far more mindful way, which is ultimately what leading with conviction is really all about. I spend so much time with people in leadership roles, and what occurs to me is that they have very limited headspace. And what I mean by that is that they are busy inside of work and they're busy outside of work. The volume of stuff that they're having to contend with is immense and ever increasing, and it never abates. And because of that, they have very little time and capacity to really think about some of the deeper questions that I'm referring to, which will ultimately build that foundational confidence. I think what compounds that, though, is that as we think about leadership and we think about being a leader, we're always taught to have these role models that we put on pedestals, and the problem with that is it means that we're forever living in the shadow of what we perceive to be greatness. And so if you've got very limited headspace to start to ask the deeper questions that will bring you back to that sense of self and that deeper sense of confidence in terms of who you are, then you're going to be forced to deeper into the shadow of feeling like you've got to compare yourself to these other people. So for me, what's getting in the way is the busyness and day-to-day stuff that people are just having to grapple with, but also the constant push for us to compare ourselves to people that actually, whether we want to be them or not, it's kind of irrelevant. It's the fact that we're comparing ourselves in the first place, which is where the real danger is. So for me, I think the place you've got to focus is getting back to trying to carve out sufficient space and time, ultimately, to really start to connect with the deeper sense of who you are. And I appreciate that probably feels like a lovely statement to make, but difficult to do. But actually, I don't think you necessarily need to spend a lifetime sort of contemplating what I call the three questions. I think you could spend a minute. You could spend a minute a day, and everybody can find a minute in a day. Because actually, I think if you can do that, you can drop some of the preconceptions that we have. You can drop some of the beliefs about needing to be confident and how you need to push yourself forward, and you can come back to finding a more solid foundation for your own identity and for your own sense of purpose, which will ultimately help you lead with greater conviction. I think for me, the one piece of advice has got to be stop comparing yourself to others, because actually, as I mentioned, it pushes you deeper into the shadow of others, and when we're in the shadow, we look up and go, how am I supposed to do that in amongst everything else that I've got to do? So I think for anybody wanting to lead with greater conviction, and I think everybody in a leadership role, that should be one of the aspirations that they have, one of the things that they're focusing their time and energy on. I think it's got to come back to really building that foundational sense of confidence in who I am and why I'm here. And because if you do that and you start to answer those questions in a different way, that gives you that sense of authentic identity, that gives you that deeper sense of purpose, how you then go about directing your energy in a more mindful way becomes a lot easier, because actually the foundation is set for how you do that. And for me, the ability to direct our energy in a more mindful way, or what I call with mindful intention, is ultimately what leading with conviction is really all about.